Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel and another video. Today I am going to show you how to make the Zaya handbag by Tobi Stylx. I tell you, I learned so much making this bag. It's completely different construction than I've done ever before in my whole bag making career. First, let me show you some of the features about this bag. So this one is done in faux leather on the exterior and on the lining. This is one where you cannot have a fraying fabric for the lining. You can do waterproof canvas, faux leather, or leather if it's a very thin leather. You can see it's a medium style bag. It's very structured. It has a, well, I have a flip lock, so flip lock or a thumb lock. Look how beautiful it looks with a faux leather lining. So you have your decorative slip pocket, you have your, well, decorative zipper pocket and slip pocket, which are both in the pattern. It's a crossbody. It also, I will show you how to make this in this video as well. It's the cutest little butterfly decorative, I guess it could be a key fob. I just have it clipped on with a swivel clasp. This bag you do need leather glue for. I don't know for sure because I've never done leather work before, but I think it's done very similar to how you would put together a leather bag. Again, I learned so much from this. Minimal interfacing. All I have for interfacing in here is some Decovil Heavy, which is actually the last step of the bag. Once you have everything assembled, the Decovil Heavy goes in last. I tell you, it's very, very unique. My hardware, my Wasp clasp here is from Blue Calla. My zipper and zipper pulls are from Blue Calla. All my hardware is from Emmaline bags. I've used Mora faux leather. This is one of the blues. I don't remember what this blue is called. Yeah, but it's one of her new blue ones. The white vinyl I've used in it is a bonded leather from Galaxy Customs. Again, I use Decovil Heavy as my main stabilizer. What else to say about this bag? I will tell you, it did make it a lot easier having a cylinder arm, but it's completely doable on a flatbed as well. It is domestic machine friendly. As I said, it's you're not sewing through any stabilizer at all. That goes in after the bag is all together. So surprisingly, a structured bag like this is domestic machine friendly. Yeah. What else to say about this bag? I don't know. I walk you through it all. Again, I learned a lot making this bag. I took it nice and slow because of all the new things I needed to learn. I share everything that I did wrong, if I did something wrong, and how I corrected it in this tutorial as well. Anyways, let's get to making this bag. For this bag, you're gonna need some rivets, number 5 zipper tape, a turn or flip lock. If you want to do chain like the pattern for your shoulder strap, I'm going to do a crossbody strap out of vinyl, a small swivel clasp, 2 D-rings, 2 rectangular rings, a number 5 zipper pull, 4 purse feet, and your nameplate, as well as some leather craft glue and a glue spreader. Pieces to cut. You will need 1 flap lining panel, 1 handle piece, your zipper overlay, your slip pocket overlay, your piece for doing the butterfly. I'm doing it a little bit different, but I'll show you how I do that in the pattern or in the tutorial. Your one of your butterfly pieces, 4 connector pieces, your main panel A, your lining panel D, side panels, 2 exterior and 2 lining, your slip pocket and your zipper pocket lining pieces, your large butterfly piece, just 2 squares cut out, to Decovil Light or EB Fuse Heavy for your side panels. And your main stabilizer piece, I'm using Decovil Heavy. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and make a crossbody strap. I'm not going to use a chain strap. If you need a class for that, that's down below in the description. Okay, so let's start with our butterfly piece because we got to let this glue set. So you're going to take your 2 squares that you cut out. You're going to place some glue on them, and we are going to stick these together, wrong sides together. I apologize for the autofocus. I do just later on in this video figure out how to make it so that goes off. So when you see the screen going in and out, just know it won't be for the whole video. All right, so once you have that, you're going to go ahead and make set those aside until they dry. And then once they're dry, take your butterfly piece and trace it out. I'm just using my air erase pen and carefully tracing out the larger butterfly pattern piece. Okay, then once that's done, take some scissors and carefully cut that out. This is such a pretty accent for this bag. I actually think this was my favorite part, was making this butterfly. Okay, so once that's done, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to edge coat both butterfly pieces with my Giardini edge paint. I do have a class for that down below in the description if you need it. Okay, so we have our, I'm going to do this a little different than the pattern because I do not have a chain to attach the butterfly. So rather than using her piece of the binding, butterfly binding, I have just cut a piece here. It is, it was 1 inch of vinyl, and I am going to fold it in half to make a 1/2 inch piece. So this piece is going to act as our chain and as the butterfly binding. And go ahead and top stitch this down each side with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so now I'm going to take that binding piece, my zipper overlay, my slip pocket overlay, and of course my butterfly pieces, and I am going to edge coat those. Okay, so now while we're waiting for that to dry, I'm going to take my main piece and I am going to mark 3/4 of an inch, I believe it is, all the way around. Again, look at your pattern to see if this is a 1/2 inch, or actually I think this was a 1/2 inch. You're going to mark it around all sides. Take the curves carefully, just kind of go section by section and dash a line through, as I'm doing here. Okay, so now we have these 4 bold lines on our pattern piece and we want to transfer them onto the back of our main panel. So I'm just taking my pattern piece and marking the edges of it like so, flipping it over and doing the same on the other side, matching up those lines that are on the pattern piece. I can see through my pattern piece here. I don't know if you can see that, but I can see where those lines are. And then I'm going to take a ruler and line those marks up to create those lines. Okay, so I'm going to take some, this is just freezer paper to protect my tabletop from this glue. I'm going to take my leather glue, and this is my first time using leather glue. I make such a mess all over my hands with this. So I'm taking my spreader and just kind of smoothing out that glue so you don't end up having those thick chunks on the other side. This should make it so you can't see the glue through the vinyl later. And then I'm folding the edges into that 1/2 inch line that we had drawn and securing them with clips to help create pressure to hold it. Now keep in mind, I did learn and I had to steam it out. When I used my Wonder clips, when I let this dry, it kind of left marks from the Wonder clips on, and I steamed them out of my vinyl. Thankfully that worked. So I think if I were to do this again, I would use those alligator hair clips because they will not leave any marks. Now you can kind of see when I get to the sharp corners, like right here, I'm pulling it kind of together and then pinching at that corner like so. So that part is going to stick up and securing that with the clips. So everywhere the clips are laying flat, except for on those corners, they're going to kind of be sitting up vertically rather than horizontally. So you're going to carry on and go all the way around the same way. Here's another corner. So I'm kind of pushing it in and matching up the corner and pinching that corner and putting a clip on that corner vertically to hold it in place while it dries. So this leather craft glue and spreader I just picked up at Tandy Leather. And I used a gazillion clips because I just wanted to make sure that it adhered properly. All right, so this is what it looks like. All my corners have a vertical clip, like so. Lots and lots of clips. I don't know if that much is necessary. I let that dry for a couple hours, took the clips off, and then on those corners where we had it sticking up, you're going to just clip them as flat as you possibly can get them to your vinyl hair. Okay, so now we want to find our center down the center here. So I kind of folding both sides in half and making a mark with my dry erase pen. And then I'm going to take my ruler and match up those marks for my center line. That was probably something I could do beforehand, but I forgot. So I'm going to just make sure it is indeed center. Okay, so now I'm just going to take my pen and on my pattern piece, poke out where my purse feet placement is going to be, as well as where I will be putting my hidden connectors, or where if you're doing the bridge connectors, you will want to make these marks as well. So lay your pattern piece down, lining up those lines that we drew on the back so we know we have our placement good. I'm marking my bridge connector here, my purse feet on this side, and also where I will be putting the male end of my turn lock. Flip the pattern piece over and mark the other side. Again, matching up those lines. Okay, so where the purse feet are, you're going to go ahead and install your purse feet. If you need a class on how to do that, that is down below in the description.
Okay, so this is what we have so far. I have backed my purse feet with scraps of Decovil Heavy for a little more stability, and then as you know, I always back my purse feet with some duct tape or Gorilla Tape as I'm doing here. I don't know if it does anything. In my mind, it does. I think it just makes things more secure, and I've never had purse feet fall out. Okay, so next we're going to go ahead and install the male side of our turn or flip block right at the marking. So that is done, and as you can see, once again, I've used a piece of Decovil Heavy scrap and some tape just to secure that a little bit more. Okay, so at this point, if you are doing the bridge connectors, you'd also go ahead and install those, but I am going to do hidden connectors here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to be cutting into where those hidden connectors were, but if you're using the bridge connectors, you would definitely be installing them instead. So speaking of connectors, let's go ahead and make our 4 connectors. So we are making our connectors for the our hidden connectors for the top flap of the bag and for the crossbody straps. So I've drawn a line down the center, I'm folding the long edges into that center, and then I'm going to go and top stitch down each folded side with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance on all 4 pieces. So here I am chain stitching those connectors. This is just to save on thread and cutting time. Just do them all in a row. Okay, so at this point in time, you're going to take your exterior side pieces and adhere the Decovil Light, or what I'm using is EB Fuse Heavy, to the sides. I am taking my pattern piece and I'm marking where my hidden connectors are going to go and my rivet placement is going to go. I'm going to go ahead and mark that with my Tandy leather pen, just through the markings here on both pieces. And those lines are where I'm going to cut to install my connectors for the D-ring side. So I've done that on the main piece for my rectangular rings, as well as my side pieces for my D-ring connectors. Now for the rectangular rings, you want to make sure that the raw edges are pointing towards the outer sides of the bag. So yes, if you need a class on how to do this, I do have that down below in the description. So here's my 2 side pieces and my main panel is complete so far. I've also added my rivets in for extra security. All right, so now for our handle, you are going to measure up 1.5 inches. So it kind of lines up where those little nubbies are sticking out. And just like we do any connector, this is really actually a really good idea to do this so you don't have any raw edges. I'm going to use double-sided tape. If your machine does not like double-sided tape, go ahead and use clips here. So I'm going to fold those long edges into that center line on both sides. And then once again, fold it in half upon itself and secure the folded edges with clips. Okay, now so for these little nubbies, I'm just going to kind of trim them up on an angle. You want where the folded edges are, you want it to be even with that on that side, but we want it to be slightly narrower on that raw edge. And the reason for that is we are going to fold them over like this, and it's going to cover up the raw edge of our handle, and then it will be hidden in behind, like that little raw edge, nubby raw edge will be hidden in behind when we go to rivet these onto the exterior of the bag. So you're going to go ahead and top stitch all 4 sides of this with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So cutting in a little bit on those little nubs, what that does is make it so it's slightly smaller, so it's not going to be lined right up with the handle piece. So those raw edges are going to be completely hidden once we rivet them on. Okay, so like this, you can see it's done. So you want to make sure you're putting them through your connectors properly so the raw edge is going wrong side together. So it won't be seen on the exterior part of the bag. So it's folded into the middle of the handle where we will be riveting it on. And then that raw edge will be completely hidden, which is awesome. So go ahead and rivet that on there and do the exact same thing with the other side. So there is our exterior finished for now. You can kind of see how the bag is taking shape. It's kind of weird because there's no interfacing and it's so floppy, but we will get to that. Now it's time for some more gluing. So we are once again going to take our exterior side panels. We're going to mark in that 1/2 inch. On all sides. And then we're going to play with some leather glue again. It's like arts and crafts here today in the studio. Actually, I had a lot of fun with the glue. It was kind of a nice and fun, different way of learning how to do a bag. So once again, you're going to be folding the edges into that 1/4 of an inch line, or in a 1/4 of an inch to that 1/2 inch line, all the way around, and letting the glue dry. So you're going to have the same thing happen with these corners, just these top 2 areas. We're going to, as we're doing it right here, fold it in. We're going to pinch right where that corner is, so that corner is going to stick up. Apply a clip vertically to hold that in place, and continue your way around. Okay, look at my fingers. They're just so covered in glue, right? So I'm going to set these aside to dry. Now that they're all dry, we're going to go ahead and clip those little corners as flat as we possibly can against our side panel here. And then we are going to match up that second line from the flap, so just below where our handles were. And we are putting these wrong sides together. Match up that second line on the left there and start clipping it down. Now the reason you can't use fraying fabrics in this is where those little places where we just clipped those corners, there may be a raw edge showing through there a little bit when we go to put the seams together. So if we hit, the lining is similar in fashion. So if there was a fraying material right there, there would be a chance that the lining would fray. So that's why you need to use a non-fraying material with this. Even though these are finished edges, right at those joining marks, there may be a little bit of the lining poking through. So I've kind of worked it all the way around and brought it up, matching up the other side like we see here. Isn't this super unique? I kind of had to distribute my fabric a little bit better here because I had a little bit too much excess, which just means I did not ease that fabric good enough around those corners. So take your time to make sure it's all good here, and then we're going to go ahead and we are going to top stitch these seams together with a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now I am doing this on my cylinder arm this way. If I was doing this on my flatbed, I wouldn't be doing it from the outside of the bag like I'm here. I would do it from the side panel side, and it would be super easy to do it that way as well. The reason I decided to do this on my cylinder arm is the way my camera setup is for my flatbed, the bag would have been in the way and you wouldn't have been able to see what I was sewing. So the cylinder arm, there's a little bit of a better visual on that. So take this nice and slow because these stitches are visible. This is your finished seam for the exterior of the bag. Also being sure that your two seams of your side panel and your main bag are not slipping. You want them to be as even as possible, just like in a drop-in lining, if you want to kind of consider it. It's kind of the same process. And this is one of the reasons why we do not have the stabilizer in the bag yet. It is a lot easier to maneuver this when doing the construction this way, when the bag is squishy rather than structured. As you can see, I can maneuver the material a lot easier, and it will make it a lot easier on a flatbed as well to maneuver the material so you can get the top stitching pristine like you will want it to be. And once you're done with that side, you're going to do the exact same thing with the other side. So here's our exterior pretty much assembled. We are not doing the female part of our turn lock just yet because we will do that once we have the Decovil Heavy installed into the bag. Okay, so now we're going to work on our lining. You're going to take your flap lining panel and you're going to mark a 1/4 inch line on the bottom, and take your lining panel, these are on the wrong sides, and match that 1/4 inch line. And that's going to be our line for just a seam allowance guide when we're sewing it. So you're going to put these right sides together, matching the bottom edge of the lining panel flap to the top edge of the main lining panel. Again, I am using a bonded leather by Galaxy Customs here. It was perfect thickness for this lining, and I gotta tell you, I think I am all about trying to do some lining or faux leather linings. It just turns out so nice. So go ahead and sew these together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, following that 1/4 inch line we drew as a seam guide. Once that's done, what you want to do is you want to push that seam towards the main lining part like this and top stitch through the lining panel to hold that seam in place. Okay, so now that that is done, we are going to play with some glue again. So I believe it's here we're marking a 3/4 inch from the bottom and 3/4 inch. I can't remember if it's a 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch. I think it's 3/4 inch. Please look at your pattern piece to see what these markings are. I do not have the pattern in front of me right now, but I believe the lining was 3/4 inch. So you're going to mark that just on the flap and on the bottom edge of the main lining. And then once again, we're going to play with our glue and go ahead and glue those sides down. You're going to notice that right at that seam, it's going to look a little awkward and sticking up, but that is okay. That is what we want. So once that is dry, once again, go around your corners and clip them nice and flat. And I had forgotten to do my markings, so I'm just going to mark up that, or match up that 1/4 inch line on our pattern piece with our seam there, and then do our marks. Again, I did make mistakes making this pattern, so I'm showing you how I overcame them. And then just drawing those lines like so. Okay, so I am going to go ahead and install my decorative zipper pocket. It's done the exact same way I do in all my bags. There's a clasp down below, so you're going to install that 1 inch down from the flap seam. Just make sure you leave your zipper pocket closed at the bottom and not open. And you're going to do the exact same thing with the slip pocket, but it's going to be 1 inch down from the other side of the lining piece. Make sure you have it orientated properly. So now we're going to go around, and this, we are not gluing this time. This is going to be a guide for our sewing. So we are drawing 1/2 inch seam allowance guidelines here along the 2 sides. And then we're going to do these sides similar to the other side, or the exterior. The only part we have to glue on this is these very top edges. So we're marking in a 1/2 inch and go ahead and glue those down, let that dry. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and install these. We're going to do this slightly different than the exterior. This is going to be more traditional to how we usually do our bag making. So you're going to put these right sides together along the one side, matching up that top edge with your folded edge of your side panel. And work that one side around the curve of your side panel, matching up your top edge just below the flap and clipping it all together. And then you're going to follow that 1/2 inch line to sew the sides on and repeat with the other side. So it's very similar to how we did the front, you're just doing it inside out. So then go ahead and trim the seam allowance down to 1/4 inch. Once you've cut that seam allowance, it should match up kind of to the flap here. I'm just going to trim off a little bit more just so they're somewhat matched up without cutting your flap, of course, just those side seams. Okay, so this is what we have so far. We have our exterior done and our lining done. Now we are going to work on our main panel interfacing. So once again, we want to go ahead and mark those lines that are on the panel, or on the pattern piece, just like we did with the main piece. So I'm just marking them on the sides, and then I will go ahead with my ruler and match up those little markings so we have our lines. Now what we're going to do with these lines is we're going to be folding them in on themselves. This is going to form the shape of our purse, and this is going to give our Decovil Heavy piece the memory of the shape of the bag for when we go to insert this inside our panels. So fold them nice and sharp on each finger, pressing them really good. And once that's done, you're going to see how this kind of forms the shape of our bag. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to take our lining panel and stick it inside of our main panel, wrong sides together. So this is like a drop-in lining. Match up those seams, and this is those seams where I told you where your lining piece, they may have a little bit of a raw edge showing. That's why you do not use a fraying fabric with this. Mine didn't show through too badly, but there's always that chance for that to happen here. So match up all of those seams, those 4 seams. Once again, making sure that our edges of our lining and our main are really nice and even. so they sew together nicely. Once again, this is a drop-in lining, nothing to be scared of. And again, it's really easy to maneuver because we don't have any interfacing in here. So we're going to go along those 3 sides, not the flap side, and we are going to sew those together with 1/8 of an inch top stitch. And we're leaving the flap completely open. We are not sewing that part together yet. So you are starting just below the flap and working your way around the 2 sides and the front of the bag. That is done. And now we're going to do, this is the hardest part of the whole bag, and it's more, it just is going to take some patience. So you are going to take that Decovil Heavy piece and you are going to feed it in between those layers. So you're going to have to bring it up and under the lining and up the front there. I ended up finding it easier to pull the lining out a little, like so. And then I could feed that Decovil Heavy piece up towards the front of the bag. So again, this is tricky. It did take some time to get it perfect, but trust me, it is worth the effort. So I'm just going by feel with my hand right up and inside the business of this bag and feeding that Decovil Heavy piece in. You will see where we folded that Decovil Heavy piece that it is going to want to sit into the corners exactly where we need them to go. And it helps you feel, because you can feel the folds of the Decovil Heavy, that they are where they need to be. Okay, and then you'll see that this Decovil Heavy in the flap, if you have it right, it will be kind of outside of those 1/4 of an inch fold-ins that we have on our 2 flap pieces. It'll line up really good in there. Okay, I'm still working it. Again, this did take a little bit of time. Once you have it in place, kind of put your stuff, your lining back down, and double check everything is laying nice and flat, which we have here. And now it's time to do a little more gluing. So what we're going to do is on the main flap is we are going to put some glue. Again, using my spreader just to spread that out so we don't have any clumping of excess glue showing through the other side. This glue did not show at all through the other side. I was very happy with it, but it did take a little bit to dry, but well worth the wait. Okay, so first off, you're going to take that Decovil Heavy piece and glue it down to the main side like so. So it'll be outside of the seam allowance, keeping in mind we will be top stitching around this with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So we do not want that Decovil Heavy to be caught in there at all. So I'm just going to put a few clips here just to help hold that glue down while I go ahead and glue the other side of the lining flap down. And glue them together. And while I'm doing this, I am going to match up my flap pieces. And this is where I learned, remember I said about the Wonder clips, how they left marks in my vinyl. So I switched to these alligator clips and they did not leave any marks in my vinyl while the glue dried, which made me very happy because then I didn't have to steam out those marks. So match up all of those folded over edges. Everything should fit nice and perfectly with that Decovil Heavy part of the flap being outside of that seam allowance. matching up your corners. And then you just have to wait a little bit of time for that glue to dry. I'm just going to take my cutting block and I'm going to place it on top of this just to make sure it sticks really good in that center part where we have glued, like so. Okay, once that is dry, we are going to go ahead and we are going to top stitch all the way around the flap, starting from where our stitching stopped when we assembled the other part of the bag, attaching it to the lining. So just carefully work your way around. And then stopping where we meet up with our stitches from the previous step as well. So there we have it. So at this point I realized I forgot to put my nameplate on. So all I did to do that was I reopened my pocket and installed it through that zipper pocket. If I did this again, I would probably leave the zipper pocket open to install that nameplate afterwards, just like we ended up doing here. And then I just went ahead and folded those raw edges of the zipper pocket in, sewed them up and stuffed them back into the zipper. So now we need to install the female part of our snap or of our turn lock. So what you're going to do is kind of feel with the male piece where it is going to connect with the flap, nice and centered, and make a mark on the flap centered with where it will be connecting, and then go ahead and install the female side of your turn or flip lock. Okay, so now on to the fun part, making this butterfly. So I have my two pieces edge coated. I'm going to take just a small snip. There's no sewing involved here, so use as much double-sided tape as you like. I'm just putting it down the center of the smaller butterfly and placing it nice and centered on top of the larger butterfly. Now this is the tricky part, is we kind of want to do two pleats. I struggled with this a little bit, but I found using a little bit of Gorilla Glue really helped the process because it dries so fast. So I did my first little pleat like so and held it for a moment to dry. Then once that was dry, I came back and I did another kind of pleat on the bottom, bringing it together like so, so we get our butterfly shape. Again, using a little bit of Gorilla Glue to help me out. So it's kind of pinched in together in the middle like so. And then I took a little glue in between those two folds just to help hold those two pleats together as well. We'll just let that dry for a moment. Okay, so once that is done, this is where I'm doing it a little bit different than the pattern because I did not have a chain for this. So I'm taking that little binding and strap that we had made, and we are going to make a little wristlet strap with that. So do it however you like to do it. What I like to do is fold over about an inch or so through the swivel clasp, bring up the other raw edge to match the hardware, and then fold over that inch or so over top of that and secure with a rivet. But any way you like to make a wristlet, you can do here. and then you're going to take your wristlet and you are going to slip it over like so to the center of your butterfly. And then you're going to take a little bit of Monster Glue right tight to where the butterfly center is, just on the top there, and glue your wristlet so it holds it in place. And then once you've done that, you clip it to your bag and we're done.
All right, that's it. That's all. See, wasn't that the most unique construction? But look at the end result. Like, it's no words. It is amazing. Anyways, if you like this video, please do me a solid, give me a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. If you like this video, you'd like to support my channel further, you can buy me a coffee. That link is down below in the description as well. And also check out my membership perks of sew-along classes if that is something that interests you. But until then, until next time, I'll catch you guys later. Bye!